Thank you. I trust that we all can write as well as we can talk, because you're really good at that talking part, I've noticed. And right now, we want to talk about the right perspective, spelled W-R-I-T-E. And that's not to say that there's a wrong perspective, but there is a best perspective that we want to talk about, and there's a reason why. I'm getting some feedback, and what do I need to do? It's my loud mouth, I know. That's the way it is. All right, okay, Jim? Okay. I don't know what you learned in school about how to write. There was a certain pattern, a certain way that things need to be said. When you sit down to write, do you find yourself going into a little bit different mode in the style? I'm going to guess a lot of times that's because you were taught that there was one right way to write. And we studied the masters, we studied the classics, and we learned a pattern of writing. Wonderful news. You can just throw that all out right now. You don't have to do it that way. The best thing in the world you can do is use your voice. But there is a certain set of approaches that we should look at, because some ways of writing are better than other ways. And there's a reason for that, and I want to talk just a little bit about the reason. Because our audience has changed. 100 years ago, there was no electricity. And what did we do? I missed something here. 100 years ago, we had no TV, we had no radio, we had no electricity, and a lot of people couldn't even read. And so books were purchased and words became valuable because we would sit around in the living room and somebody who could read would read the story to everybody in the room. And at that time, it was necessary for all the details to be given. Every word, create the picture, show us the trees, show us the waterfall, tell us how high the sun is, how hot is it, are there clouds? All those details were important back then. And when you read the classic, you will read lots of details. But this changed. And I can remember when I was a kid, sitting in the living room, around on the couch, listening to the radio show. Because there was the Lone Ranger. And never before had we been given all of the sound and the words. They're all right there on the radio. And we didn't have to imagine the kinds of voices, because there were different voice actors that had all the right kind of emphasis. And we're so excited about that. Now, let's fast forward to where we are right now. And we can pick up a movie on our cell phone, on our laptop, on our TV at home. We can grab a movie from anywhere. And what do we have? All the details are supplied to us. Everything's there. This change has caused our audience to be different. And we have acquired what I call a cinematic mindset. And what has happened here is the appetite for words has changed. We don't want details. When we watch a movie, we want to be caught up into the action. And we don't want a lot of time spent on details, because in movies, we're not given that. Now, I want you to know, what are you competing with if you want someone to read your book? You are competing with them for their time. And if they can watch a movie and it has the value of 12 hours of reading, but the movie only takes 2 hours, guess what they're going to choose? There is a way, and this is what we want to talk about today, an approach that we can take that makes books better than movies. Have you ever read a book and you thought it was better than the movie? Yeah. Why? Because when you read that book, we're right back before radio was invented. And we're looking at those words, and with our own imaginations, we are creating the background, the color, the details, and it's more real to us because it's personal. It's our experience that we are relating to in the novel, in the nonfiction story. So there's a certain approach we want to our storytelling that grabs people's attention and holds it. So then the details become less important. We want to avoid what we call purple prose. That is from a quote from Horace in 65 BC, a poet who talked about the purple patches in the writing. And this was a problem with that author's writing. It has purple patches. What did that mean? Well, only the royalty had purple clothes. But when all those clothes were discarded, people who were poor would cut little good pieces of purple and sew it onto their garments, thinking that's going to make them look rich. But it had the opposite effect. It said, look at me, I'm not that good. I'm not that rich. And this is what we do today with our writing when we include details that aren't essential to the story. They then become distractions, and we want to avoid them. Purple prose. What detail is unimportant? The detail that's unimportant is whatever is not important at that moment to your point of view character, your main character in the scene. Some people have asked, should a story be written from the plot or should it be the character? Can I answer that for you? All stories are about a character. They always are and always will be. And if you want to hold your audience's attention, then we better center on the character. Every reader will have the perspective. Did I click that? I must have. Or it's magic. Readers will always have the perspective of the narrator. If you are writing a chapter and you see yourself as the narrator observing what's happening to the character, you're too far away from the character. You need to be the character describing what happens through the eyes and ears and all the senses of that particular character. That's what brings the story alive, and that is what will begin to compete with movies, television. It competes with the screen. This is what we're competing with. Readers need to experience the problem, not drive by. I suppose you've read about accidents in the newspaper. Did you cry? Did you have to wipe away the tears? Of course not, because you weren't there. But if you're in the vehicle driving by and you see the car flipped upside down and another car, and you look at the emergency vehicles and you say, oh wow, I'm glad I'm not in that. But then you're still an observer. To be really engaged, you know where you need to be? I want the experience of the person who came out of that alive. That's where the heart-gripping part of your story is. Your goal in every scene is to become the character in which everything that's happening around that character matters. So in each scene, tell your story from the main character's point of view. Now, the main character may be sitting up on a real tall point, viewing and seeing the whole countryside. You can be any particular character in your scene, but just be that character for the scene. Or you might be the person who is making the climb, who hasn't arrived, and his life is at risk. Can you see how that begins to matter in a scene? When your reader becomes this character, how can they not be engaged? They have to be engaged. What's going to happen? They want to feel the climb. So what we have in a story is things happening. But let's realize that both fiction and nonfiction stories require, underscore this, believability. I don't care whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction. Your stories should read the same. If you're reading a fiction story, you shouldn't be able to tell it's fiction. It should be that real. And if you're writing a nonfiction story, you dare not assume that a miracle is going to be accepted at face value. And I've had authors tell me, oh, but it really did happen. Doesn't matter. If your reader doesn't believe it, the story's gone. It's ruined. They'll change channels. They'll go to something else. Your story must be believable. So when you're telling this miracle story, one approach that's great is to show how this is impossible. This can't happen. I know it can't happen. There's no way. Readers are really smart. You know, after about 6, 7 times you say this can't happen, guess what readers think? I think this might actually happen. Now you have readers walking with you in the area of believability. Always believable. And the scene and everything that goes on has to show that believability. Some people think that we best communicate the truth by telling the truth. You support the truth by showing the alternatives and showing how they don't work. Show the things that would make it not believable and rule those out. Do that work for your reader. Show all the ways this couldn't happen. And then you've given it believability. Be aware of where your story is. There's always a beginning and end to a story. There's always a beginning and end to a chapter. But your story is in the middle there, in the struggle. Always the struggle. There's something your character is going through. Your focus in your story, the meat of your story, is in the struggle, not the before, not the after. The before is the setup, the after is the takeaway. That's not to say those things aren't important. But really the hard part that you've got to work on is the struggle. Why? Because most of us don't really enjoy struggles. Most of us would rather give the answer without presenting the problem and without presenting all the trauma that we went through to get to the answer. But this is exactly what we need to do as writers. So I want to give you a simple little plot plan. I don't know how many of you love outlining and plotting. I think outlining is wonderful. I used to do it in school. I always did it after I wrote the story. That's when we need an outline. What we need at the beginning is to just write, except we need to know where to start and where to wind up, and some idea of what might happen in between. That will make us a good chapter, and it will make us a good book. It applies both to chapters and to the entire book. It involves all aspects of storytelling. If these 7 elements exist in your story, it is going to be attention grabbing. I put it in a simple little acronym there, SCOOP it up. Situation, character, objective, obstacle, plight, insight and transformation, unresolved problem, spells, scoop it up. So what is that? The S is situation. And we don't need much situation because we already said details aren't all that important. Oh, but there are details that are important. Important to the character at that moment. What's important in a situation is to let readers know where they are in time and place. We don't want them to feel lost. Are they in modern times? Are they first century? Are they medieval times? Where are they? They need to know where they are. Are they in the country? Are they in the city? just a little bit to suggest where I am, but not much, because what's going to follow is going to take readers on the journey of finding out. We want just enough to create a little bit of interest, like something being fired from the sky from a UFO. To pull readers into the action, we must have a character. Characters are all that matters to story. Or at least I should say, it is what matters most. In my yard, I have 2 beautiful oak trees. They are now quite large, some 25 years old. I like those oak trees, but I have yet to hug one. I don't hug trees. I might be a tree lover. I don't hug trees. We hug characters. We cry tears for people. And so we have a character, and when you have a chapter from a particular character's point of view, you have to be that character. Now you see 3 people on the screen. I believe you can see that these are 3 different people. I personally can relate to the one in the center. That's my kind of guy. I like it. But if I'm writing from a female point of view, I've got to be the character over on the end. If I'm writing from an old, mature point of view, I've got to be that character. You need to acquire multiple personality disorder. You really need to become that person in each scene. Every scene can have a different point of view character. Just be clear on who your point of view character is so that your readers know which way the action is taking and who's being affected. And then we can go on with the next thing that's important, which is the first O letter, the objective. All characters in every scene have to want something. If you don't know what that is, your writing is going to be weak for that chapter. There must be a purpose. If there's not an objective where your character isn't wanting something, guess what is happening to your reader? Who is the character? They aren't wanting anything either. Do you see why that would be a problem? We need to have it clear, some sense of direction and some sense of purpose, that we have this objective. My point of view character wants something, and now there must be, the second O word, obstacles. Why are obstacles important? Hey, I love the character. Why can't we just go ahead and tell the story without any obstacles? Yes, you can, but you're going to lose your reader. Do you know why? Because if there are no obstacles, you know how the story is going to turn out. And if your reader knows how the story is going to turn out, you've lost your reader. So we must fail our way to success because of one obstacle after another obstacle. In my scene, I have a character who wants something. And now I have to think about why my character doesn't already have it. Write down an obstacle. Now you're going to set up your character, and your character is going to want something, and your character is going to have an obstacle. Now here's the miracle fun of storytelling, especially if you're writing fiction. You don't know until you really get into the scene how your character is going to react. And this is fun. It's an adventure for the writer because you're letting your character, true to that character's personality and goal, you're letting that chapter happen naturally, and your reader is going to follow that. And what's interesting about this is because we're not outlining and saying it has to be a certain way, your characters are not going to act the way you thought they ought to. Because I'm not the old guy anymore over on the corner. In this scene now, I'm the young, good-looking lady. And I don't react like this old guy. And so we begin to see our different characters act in different ways that are surprising even to us as the author. This is fun. This is an adventure for us that we can pass on to our readers. So we must have obstacles. And then we concern ourselves with the plight. Because the obstacles we have matter, and what we want matter, because of the reward that we perceive or the consequence if we don't get it. There really needs to be some kind of life or death concern. Now, I want us to realize that all of our chapters and our whole book doesn't have to be focused on whether somebody's going to live or die. But don't we see a lot of movies that are focused on that? Don't we see the ticking time bomb and all of Los Angeles is going to be blown up? Or the whole state of New York is going to fall into the ocean? Or the whole planet is going to be blown up? This concerns us because it's a life or death matter. But I want you to know that emotional life and death is more moving to your reader than whether somebody is shot. We've kind of become desensitized to people getting shot. But the emotional struggles that we have really matter. So let me put it this way. As a teenager, I want you to know that a zit, or pimple, or whatever we call those things that spring up on our face, that is a life or death matter in high school. Would you agree? How we look, how other people look at us, how other people feel about us. So that concerns, that's the P word that we need to pay attention to. Why does what is happening, why does it matter? That's what you want to be aware of. So let's follow where we are. We've spelled out scoop. There's just 5 things you need to write down, and I do this just in a SCOOP. S, what's the situation? Just basically time and place. Who's my character? Just the name, basically who they are. That's going to be my point of view character. What objective does that character have? Okay, I write that down. And what are the obstacles? And I think about, okay, this could happen, this could happen. Oh, but if that happened, how would my character react? That might get interesting. You start thinking about all the things that could go wrong. And in our own nonfiction stories, we forget about those things. Do you know when we're really worried about things, there's about a dozen problems that we imagine in our mind that never happen? That makes story. You go back into your character and you imagine all these things that before you could have imagined, but we forget those things. You got to go back and remember them, and because those are important obstacles. So you just write down a few obstacles. And then you write why it matters, the plight. Now you have the basic structure to put together an interesting story. Then you can write a 2-sentence summary, you can write a paragraph or 2, or you can write a full chapter and see how this unfolds from beginning to end. When you have these 5 elements defined, you will have a captivating chapter. Then we are concerned with the it. What is it? It stands for insight and transformation, which simply says my character from experience is going to learn something. And if I learn something, I am changed. From one chapter to the next, we see new insights and new transformation. If you want a movie that perfectly depicts a progression of scenes of insight and transformation, watch the movie The Ultimate Gift, in which somebody who has never worked a day in his life and doesn't care anything about anything except having a party becomes somebody who cares about people. And it happens one scene at a time. And I get 5 minutes more. There is, after that, the unresolved problem. Because there's always a next story. There's always a next chapter. There is always the next book. And sometimes this is a great lead-in to the next chapter so that readers want to know, oh, now he's won the lottery, what's he going to do with the money? There's a problem after the solution. And so we take readers through the unresolved problem. Best-selling books are not necessarily the best writing, but read in your genre, learn what works and what doesn't work, and then you use this simple little formula, you can write better. Now, I have spent I've tried to, in this 20 minutes or so, tried to give you 6 hours of information. A little bit difficult. Back here on the table, there are some copies of Storytelling at Its Best, in which I go to much greater detail to talk about Scoop It Up and many, many other topics that are important to writing. The focus of this book is to not tell you all the different points of view that you can write in and all the different possibilities and what you can do, because quite honestly, the only badly written book is the one that was never written. We just need to write. But I sell those for $15. Here at the conference, they're $10. So feel free to have one, you'll save $5. Or you can buy it on Amazon. I also have a storytelling intensive coming up, and trust me, you get this word, intensive. This is 6.5 hours nonstop where you get to hear me just a little bit of the time, and it's a whole lot of hands-on work that you will do with your laptop or with your paper and pen, in which we will learn about creativity, we'll learn a little bit about formatting in Word and how to make Word work best for us. And today only, it's $159, not the $235 that you have on the little sheet that's in your packet. But you have to sign up today. I can take a dozen students, so don't everybody sign up, okay? Then we'd have to do it more than once. But it'll be well worth your time. Why? This is hands-on practice. I have spent thousands of dollars attending seminars, and when I got back to my office, I didn't know what to do. When you do hands-on work, and I've taken hands-on work in seminars where my fingers had to do the walking, and when I got back to the office, I knew a lot about what to do. And so this will help you a lot. And then we'll talk a little bit more about Scoop It Up at the same time. So that is the right perspective. Thank you.